Hello and welcome. You have tuned into FutureRant with Gabriel D Vine, where we discuss the future and applications with, of course, an emphasis on cryptography, Bitcoin technology, and of course, a little bit wider discussions of philosophy and the implications of all this futurist subject matter. I'm extremely excited to welcome onto FutureRant today Manfred Karrer from Bisq, B-I-S-Q, also known previously as Bitsquare. They just rebranded. We are going to be discussing the project and some new developments with Bisq. So Manfred, say hi.
Yeah, hello, Gabriel. Thanks a lot for having me on your show.
Yeah, it's just an absolute pleasure to have somebody on the show that I have so much respect for, not only for your just for leading Bitsquare and Bisq, but how you've done the project and the rhetoric surrounding the project have really impressed me. That's why I brought you on the show today. So if you could please give us a bit of a short bio of yourself. I know you are from Austria, from Upper Austria, and you have a background as a musician, as I do. So can you give us a bit of an idea what the path was between musicianship to technology?
Yeah, that's actually, I think it's not a very unusual history, because I met already quite a few musicians in this space. And for me, it's not a coincidence, because for me, it has a lot in common in a way. Yeah, my background is I was a musician until the age of 30, more or less. Was playing cello and guitar and had a band and also electronic music. And actually with that, I came to computers or to programming. I was doing electronic music and was using a tool, it's a graphical object-orientating programming tool where you can program music on a very, very base level, so sinus waves and algorithmic programming and so. And I got completely lost in this and it was super fascinating.
What is that called? What is that thing called?
It was called Max MSP. I think it still exists, but I think it's called, it has a different name now. In the 90s, it was pretty famous and so.
Yeah, I remember that. And people would use it to make modular synths and stuff too, right?
Yeah, you can build everything basically. And my project at the end in this, in this school where I've been for electronic music was to develop an application where you can generate out a whole composition out of any sound. So you feed it with any piece of small sound of whatever sample, and from that you generate, by sampling, you are generating sounds. You are analyzing the shape of the volume shape and the how it's in English, the Hüllkurve in German.
Hüllkurve.
Hüllkurve.
This is like an acoustical, technical term.
I don't know.
No, that would be the waveform.
Yeah, in a way. Also, when you have a longer piece of music or so, you see the structure in the development of the volume and so on. And yeah,
the amplitude chart. Yeah, amplitude.
Yeah, something like this. And I used all this, basically all the information. What this is, any kind of small piece of sound, and generate the whole piece of music of whatever, 5 minutes or longer. That was my intention. Of course, the music was always bullshit what came out, but the programming part was super exciting. And with that, I got lost in programming. And at the end, I was not aware that it was programming in this time. And I had myself always a bad consciousness, because I was doing too much programming and not enough music. But later I found out, yeah, actually I got more attracted by the programming part, like by the making music part. And then over time, yeah, I started to work on with web stuff and so on, and games, online games, and became a professional software developer. And 2011, I got lost in another thing, which is called Bitcoin. I don't know if you've heard about this. So a strange decentralized cryptocurrency, no Nobody has an idea how it can work without the banks and the governments. It cannot work, but whatever. Some crazy guys called Satoshi Nakamoto has invented this. And yeah, I had the luck that I was reading a very interesting blog post. I unfortunately don't remember where it was, but it was really brought the idea very to the point. And I got immediately very attracted by that and thought, wow, that's the biggest revolution and invention since the internet itself, and will change, or has the potential at least to change the world more profoundly like any other political movement or whatever. Because yeah, money is the central of power, and when this technology is questioning and redefining how money is seen and defined and how it works and how it's controlled, yeah, then it touches the very, very center of the power of the world, and that's a very political issue. And yeah, that was the main reason why I was really attracted. I was not so much interested in the financial, speculative stuff also. And I thought in the beginning, yeah, that's C++, and I have no idea about this. It's way too far away from me. But I always wanted to do something. And once I quit my job and wanted to make a break for, I just thought 1 year. Now it's already 3.5 years. And first I started to make iOS stuff, also mobile development. But then when Apple kicked out all their Bitcoin applications, then I got very clear about it that this is not what I want to do. And in this time, it was in the time when Mt. Gox and when it was still this price peak, and so, and I thought, yeah, I have to do something in the Bitcoin space. I'm losing this super interesting stuff and doing the iOS bullshit that doesn't make sense. Let's try to find anything what I can do. And with some friends, I was a little bit discussing these ideas about the decentralized exchange that was long time already always discussed on Bitcoin Talk Forum and so on. And there were several ideas out, but no clear concept and idea how to really do it. And I was basically just playing around and learning on the way. And I came up with a model then where I had the feeling that it should work. And I tried to find developers who can implement then the concept. Unfortunately, fortunately, I didn't find developers. So I went further and thought, okay, then I'll build a prototype. And so with the prototype, I can find more people helping and working on the project. That also, yeah, it helped a little bit. I found a few people then, but the main work was always left on me at the end. And so it came that the prototype became then a productive application, and developed further. And I became bigger and bigger, and the point of no return was already passed. So I got lost in the rabbit hole. And a year ago, we launched Bitsquare was called in this time, also in April last year. We had the public launch, and it's live since more than a year now. And now, at the moment, we are preparing to launch the DAO as a decentralized autonomous organization, which is a very important part for me. Basically, it was planned from the very beginning to have a form of decentralized funding and organization model. I always rejected the classical funding strategies like investment, venture capital investment, or something like this. And I think, yeah, but it was very hard at the end to find a model of the DAO which is really decentralized and which really works also with the legal constraints, with security laws and so on. And luckily, yeah, we found a solution which I think is solid and works. We also discussed this with, we can go later more into details about this.
Back up a little bit. Back up. Okay, so for our listeners, what Manfred is talking about, this project Bisq, it's a decentralized Bitcoin exchange software. What it enables is for users to trade Bitcoin and altcoins directly peer-to-peer with each other, in addition to allowing the trade of fiat off exchange. In other words, not using this software, but nevertheless, the trades include the price, for example. So when people put an offer up, they'll put the fiat value. So the fiat trade is going on offline, but the crypto is moving within Bisq. And so you run client software, it shoots the messages and different things back and forth over Tor. All of the users are only identified as Tor nodes in the system. So it is actually, in that sense, anonymous. But if once you engage in a trade, the fiat side, of course, you have to trade bank, your bank information is in the software, and it gets transmitted automatically to the person who's paying the fiat. But the fiat side, of course, you have to do off the software. However, there's a 2 of 3 multi-signature transaction that represents the trade. And so if somebody tries to pull a fast one and not pay, then a third-party arbitrator is going to find in favor of the person that was getting scammed, and you have to make both sides have to make deposits. And so if somebody tries to run away without paying, not only will they not get the Bitcoin that they said they were going to buy, they also forfeit their deposit. So there's a number of pretty decent safeguards to protect users. But of course, it's not a company, and there's no real recourse. If you don't like the decision that the arbitrator makes, you don't have recourse. It's not like you can sue them, sue Bitsquare or something. You have no recourse with that. So it's definitely a bit, flying without a net. But people do use it. It's got quite a bit of volume. I'm sure Manfred can speak more to the actual numbers lately, but it's got a little bit of liquidity. And people are definitely using it. It's definitely usable. People are trading US dollars and euros and all sorts of other currencies from all over the world back and forth using Bitcoin. And they're also trading Bitcoin with altcoins and altcoins, I think, with each other. So this is the software that actually is, as Manfred mentioned, launched and in production. And I would like to also point out, just on the technical level, and I do want to get into how the project was originated on a technical level, but you didn't have dynamic fees. And so at times of heavy Bitcoin network congestion, there were definitely some issues with Bisq offers getting lost and things because trades were not making it to the blockchain. But you just launched version 0.5 a few weeks ago, which implemented dynamic fees, and now those problems are a thing of the past, and users of Bisq around the world are saving lots of money because the fees are a lot lower. So can you talk to correct anything that I said that was wrong just now, but also talk about how you started building the project yourself?
Yeah, no, that was a fantastic summary. I couldn't have brought it better to the point. Thanks a lot. Where should I start? I mean, the main important features of the project and the motivation why I did it was the decentralization and the protection of privacy.
Yeah, of course. So how did you said that you built a prototype yourself? Quickly, how did that go down?
Okay, yeah. Initially, I just started with a white paper in a way and discussed this with several people on the forum and so on. And after, also one famous one was Amir Taaki, who launched in a little bit later the dark markets protocol, which was very similar from the idea. And and I started.
So I just want a little aside for our listeners. The Amir Taaki's dark market prototype is what became today's OpenBazaar project. And OpenBazaar is just about to launch their 2.0 version, which finally integrates Tor, which will then fulfill the vision that Amir Taaki had, which was to create a totally decentralized sort of marketplace software.
Yeah. I started with a Python implementation, but then quickly moved over to Java because I've seen that Java is much more mature for such a big application. I've seen that this will become a big and a complex application where I didn't felt safe enough with a language, with a scripting language like Python. And yeah, I implemented first the wallet. I use Bitcoin, or I'm using Bitcoin J, and actually got surprised. And I found another important library for a peer-to-peer network. That was Tom peer-to-peer. It was a DHT, as a distributed hash table. With that, you could store and could send messages in a peer-to-peer network. And with those two libraries, with Bitcoin J and with Tom peer-to-peer, I got very quickly to a working prototype where you can make a trade with the multisig, and where you had a basic trade protocol with a basic UI was already working after 3 or 4 months. So I was myself.
Awesome. And regarding Java, I've read some things online. I'm not an expert in these matters at all, but are there any legal implications of using the Java technology?
No. I mean, there is an open source version out, OpenJDK. I mean, Java has a little bit of bad reputation because Oracle, many hackers don't like the company Oracle, me included. But it's a huge platform where millions of developers and companies are using it. Actually, they cannot do much. I think it's a very mature and very safe platform. And it has a lot of benefits because it's cross-platform. So I never had big issues to deploy it on all the major operating systems, which is a big problem when you do it in C or in any other platform, because then you develop for one platform and it costs you then a lot of effort that everything works on another platform. And the whole development environment is all super mature. It's one of the most used programming language in the programming industry. So I'm pretty happy actually to have chosen Java. And many people have a little bit of a wrong impression. They just know the security issues with Java applets in the web, which has nothing to do with Java as a runtime when you use it as a desktop application.
Oh yeah. I don't think there's any security things, in Java. Like you said, it's a very mature ecosystem. Okay, cool. So yeah, well, it took you 3 or 4 months. That's not too bad. And you came from more of a web developing and iOS app development background?
Yeah, my background was started with web stuff and then with online games. That was my main work for a while, and then for bigger companies, web interfaces which were based on Flash or on later Flex. So not the classical HTML stuff, but more the application-centric stuff, because Flash and Flex was always was more application approach. And also I'm coming from this UI development side, and I was always fascinated by peer-to-peer network and this technology and I was super happy to get now close in touch with all this. Yeah, and on the way, I got into a problem with this peer-to-peer network. 2 years ago, more or less. It was working very well in controlled environments, but when we want to really use it in the open, wild internet, then we had quite a lot of troubles with not traversal mainly.
Yeah, and is this like syncing issues? I think you've alluded to them in other interviews. Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's about that when you are a normal consumer PC, you are usually not accessible from outside of the web. It's just servers are open to get access from outside.
Right, you have to open ports for like a Bitcoin node or whatever.
Exactly. You have to configure your router, and I didn't want that the users are forced to do some technical stuff. I wanted that they just download, double-click, and that works. And that was the problem. And yeah, actually, I never got it really solved. I spent quite a lot of time on this. And then I moved away by a recommendation from a friend who has recommended me then this Tor solution to use Tor as the network layer. And Tor, as we know, is perfect with getting over every firewall, including some governments. And and with that, we got all the privacy from Tor for free. And that was, of course, a huge benefit as well. So with that, I have had the network problem solved, but I didn't have a peer-to-peer framework also. So I needed to build my own peer-to-peer framework, which was basically similar like the Bitcoin peer-to-peer concept or architecture. So it's a flood-fill network where you are sending out the message to all the users or to all the users whom you are connected. And this has quite a lot of advantages over a distributed hash table for security and for robustness of the network. Because a DHT is easier to attack, that you are controlling a few nodes and you are malicious then and make damage. And Satoshi had a good reason why he used this flood-fill network, which is not so efficient, but which gives much more censorship resistance and security.
What's the name of this network again?
It's also this type of architecture. It's called flood-fill or
flood-fill.
Flood-fill, yeah.
Okay.
Or gossip network. And it basically means like, yeah, you're connected with 10 peers. When you have a message, you send it to all your 10 peers. When it's a message which is intended for all the peers, like an offer, when you create an offer, you send it to all your 10 peers. Every other who receive it, send it again to all the other, and it's redundant. So every peer gets the message 3, 4, 5 times. And it's very hard if one peer would be malicious and try to filter something, it's very difficult that he succeed with this.
Wow, and so this is a type of peer-to-peer network technology that was invented by Satoshi just for Bitcoin.
No, not invented. It's a classical concept.
Excellent. Okay, and he adopted it. It was the right choice for the. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Yeah.
And with Tor, we are using these hidden services, which are fantastic. So we are not going to the ClearNet or the exit nodes. It's just inside of the Tor network. And you are either communicating private with one peer in a trade process. So when you're trading with another peer, it's a Tor connection directly from one peer to the other. Or when you are broadcasting to the whole network, like when you're publishing an offer, then it goes to the whole network, and it's all encrypted, signed, and it's actually 2-time encrypted because it's on the application side encrypted and signed, and then the Tor network provides another layer. So yeah, we got probably much more security and privacy on that layer like we would really need also, but it's fantastic to have this. And yeah, the user don't need to do anything. It runs in the application and the user don't see anything from Tor, basically. Don't need to set up anything. It works very well. I get very few reports of problems. Of course, with any application, in some machines, there are always some problems. You never get 100%, but yeah, it works
very
well.
clever. That is awesome. Yeah, because I was thinking about that because there are a lot of peer-to-peer softwares like torrents and running a Bitcoin node that require you to do port forwarding, and port forwarding is like a pretty big stumbling block, as as our friend Tone Vase was experiencing. He was, he's done some programming in the past, but even he was a little bit tripped up because every router is different, and port forwarding is definitely an annoyance. I think that was very clever of you to sidestep it completely. So a year ago, you launched, the beta or alpha or whatever, and it's been being used. You had this fee issue, which was causing some stumbling blocks. That was like a relatively major drawback that is now gone. And so now your next step is to move forward with the DAO. Now, distributed autonomous organizations got a really bad rap because this big scam thing that was made last year named themselves the DAO, even though DAO is a very general concept. And their code was horrible, as everyone said it was. And a bunch of people piled their money, their ether into it, which was completely stupid. And then they lost it. It led to a hard fork in Ethereum. It's just this huge mess. And it gave people like a bad taste in their mouths about DAOs. And a lot of people, even people I consider very intelligent, have made comments to the effect that DAOs are scams. There's no use cases for them. And I have been disagreeing with them the whole time. I think DAOs have an extremely bright future. And in fact, I think that DAOs are actually going to take over enormous swaths of the world economy. I think DAOs are going to be sort of the new way that industry organizes, with extremely distributed ownership, because it's so powerful. But it requires, you know, quite a number of advances in philosophy and in some cases technology. And it's really, I'm a little bit surprised that it took until 2017 for me personally to see a DAO that I thought was genuinely had potential to go in and be a functioning ecosystem. Like think of a mechanism or engine is the way I think of a DAO, and that's sort of self perpetuating. And I didn't, other than Bitcoin, which is in a sense a distributed autonomous organization, I really haven't seen any proposals that resonated with me as something genuinely, how can I put it, plausible or genuinely purposeful, and something that gave me confidence that it would work out. And the more I dig into your particular formulation of the Bisq DAO, the more I think this is kind of what I've been envisioning from the start, for an example of a DAO. And it doesn't matter what project. In this case, it happens to be, you know, the development and flourishing of a decentralized Bitcoin exchange. As far as I'm concerned, a DAO could be, creating. It could be a flower garden, or manufacturing tanks. I mean, it could be anything. It just has to have the right incentives and the right structures. And in this case, you've created this concept. Of course, it hasn't launched yet. You've created a concept that I think has some features that other DAOs will probably adopt. Now, I just want to give the audience a bit of a feel of how I see the DAO, and I'd love to be corrected on anything I get wrong by you, Manfred. So, this distributed autonomous organization is a way for Bisq to move forward and fund its own development, and also fund its own even marketing and anything that you would maybe associate with a company nowadays, other than profit takers at the top and anything centralized, is something that you will generally need for a project. You need human beings to do labor, in this case, writing software, doing marketing, doing branding, design, user interface, design, development of all sorts of types. You need human beings to do things, and you need to compensate the human beings for their time and effort. So what any DAO is going to need is a system to make that work. In the case of the Bisq DAO, instead of doing this totally misaligned, ridiculous practice of an initial coin offering, which is just opening huge doors to scams, Manfred has taken a much, and Manfred and the other contributors who have conceptualized and helped him with this white paper, have decided that they want to have an issuance of a token that is done in a moderately decentralized fashion to begin with, and no initial coin offering, just an issuance that everybody is agreeing on from the start. And so this issuance is a BSQ token. It does not have its own blockchain. It's colored Bitcoin. Each BSQ token is a unit of 1,000 Satoshis. And the token provides 3 functions. You pay contributors with it. The DAO itself votes on this. And it's also, the BSQ tokens are used as the voting chips for governance. And in addition, it's in a sense like an app coin, in that users of Bisq save 90% on trade fees when they use Bisq by using the BSQ token instead of just plain Bitcoin. So that is in a nutshell. The DAO, the stakeholders, in other words, people who have BSQ tokens, use them in a monthly voting phase to decide all sorts of stuff. And one of the things that they decide every month is who gets the new BSQ tokens that will be created. And when you spend BSQ tokens on trades in Bisq for your trading fees, they get destroyed. And then when you have the voting phase, the people that get approved for new BSQ token creation actually create them themselves, so it stays totally decentralized. But they get the key to create them from the DAO in general. So have I got a general overview correct with that long diatribe?
Yeah, that was a perfect overview. Just a tiny detail at the end. Also, the contributors who have then the right to issue new tokens when they get accepted in the voting process, they are issuing themselves a token. They don't need a key. It's just they are making basically a Bitcoin transaction and to pay a tiny amount of Satoshi to themselves. And when they get accepted in the voting process, this output of this transaction will be interpreted as new BSQ. So like a miner in Bitcoin who creates new Bitcoin when they find a block. In my model, yeah, you as a contributor, you create such a transaction in the application. You don't need to do anything manually, of course. But the application creates this Bitcoin transaction with normal Bitcoin input, a small amount of Bitcoin, and a small amount basically of Bitcoin output. But at the moment, after the voting is complete, when you get accepted, this Bitcoin output will be interpreted as a colored coin at the BSQ and has much more value like the underlying Satoshi value. And with that, we have really a decentralized issuance model where nobody, no foundation, yeah, it's decided by those who are voting. Those who are voting, they are authorizing basically those issuances.
Right. And so when you propose so when a node, so these are all, this could totally be completely anonymous. You've got your Bisq software open, and you've got, this is built into the software. You want to make a proposal for you to get the new issuance of BSQ tokens. You actually have to do that with this transaction. If it gets approved, then the software network sort of sends the data through and like approves it and makes the colored coin itself. Is that kind of how it works? Because if there's no key involved anywhere in the process, then anyone could make BSQ tokens by hand, right?
Yeah, now it's verified by every client. Every Bisq client will verify the whole process. So the voting data, so when people are voting on acceptance of contribution requests or other parameters of the DAO, those voting data will be stored on the blockchain in an op-return data structure, and they are published in also nobody can fake this data. They are in the blockchain.
Right.
And
the op-return has a string, super long number in it or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And every user is collecting this data from the op-return in their application and running. It's basically like a smart contract, but I don't use this term because it's overhyped and yeah, people understand strange fantasy things. And at the end, it's not so something special. It's just code which gets executed in a peer-to-peer system, which is rooted to a trusted data source, and we're using the blockchain for this trusted data source. So, and that's important stuff. We don't need Ethereum to make all this execution of the smart contract or of all this code, like verifying the voting and summarizing the result of the voting. That would be super expensive and doesn't make sense, because why any node which has nothing to do with Bisq should run this code. It's only interesting for the ecosystem of Bisq, and that's all the users, all the token holders. They are running the application and they are doing all the verification. They are collecting the data, what's required. Yep. And they are basically trustlessly, so they don't need to trust anybody. They can run themselves a Bitcoin Core node, and then they are completely trustless.
Yeah.
Most people will not do this, and then they are getting the data from the network.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit like SPV, also like a simple verification protocol. It's not so 100% trustless, but good enough, and you get the convenience that you don't need to set up a local node. And so,
if you are running a full node, will Bitsquare grab the blockchain locally instead, and then serve that to everybody else? Is that how it works?
Also, when you are running your local Bitcoin Core node, you are getting all this data from the Bitcoin blockchain over your local node, so you don't need to trust the seed node. For all the other who are running the light version, they get the data from the seed node, but there are minimum 4 or more seed nodes in future, operated by different developers. And when just one seed node is out of sync and deliver a different state of the data, everything get re-evaluated and the user get alerted. So all have to collude, and then they cannot steal money. They can just hide transactions or whatever.
And for regular users that are just running this light client, they don't know any of that's going on. They just see it and they just trade their Bitcoin.
Yeah, a normal user in Bisq, he don't need to use BSQ and don't need to know anything about this. It's just an additional feature for our core users who want to get cheaper trading fees and who want to be part of the DAO. And when they want to be or those who are working on the project, then they move to one menu in the application, and it's everything integrated there. Volume,
right. So that's great. So I'd like to actually back up a second, because something you mentioned there I really want to emphasize, and that is that technically speaking, on a philosophical or pedagogical basis, you might say, this is an example of a smart contract infrastructure, but because Ethereum is a network where smart contracts live directly in the blockchain, people think that smart contracts have to do that, and that's absolutely not the case. And in fact, Bitcoin, hardcore Bitcoiners, myself included, certainly Satoshi Nakamoto, were very clear about the fact that they wanted to have as little data in the blockchain as possible, so that it could be as secure and solid and sound as could possibly be made. And that if you want to do sophisticated software using Bitcoin, you build it in a layer on top. And Bitsquare Bisq nowadays is a perfect example of a layer 2 solution. It utilizes another peer-to-peer network that isn't the Bitcoin one, although it works very similarly. It's a different one. It hits the blockchain when it needs to, but otherwise it's just shooting messages across the internet back and forth, which can handle huge volume. So the people are just the clients, everybody, the peers are just their software is just talking to each other over the internet. And then if somebody says yes, I submit, and the UX of Bisq is great because it asks you to confirm your trade and things like that. So you actually, okay, cool, I confirm, boom. That's when the transactions finally get broadcast to the Bitcoin network. So it's offloading huge amounts of important communications off the Bitcoin network itself and out of the Bitcoin blockchain. Only just the things that need to be approved by a database that everybody agrees on needs to hit the blockchain. All this other stuff can live in your client. It's not nearly as security sensitive, and it's privacy sensitive, but the security and soundness isn't quite as intense. But nevertheless, you're using cryptographic protocols in order to issue these tokens. The voting is all done totally cryptographically. I mean, you could do civil attacks and attack the network, but you could never fake the voting because it's totally decentralized. So I think that's a really great point, and Bisq is a perfect example of the types of things that Bitcoin enables without having to know anything at all about it. It's the classic software principle of separation of concerns, where you don't try to squish everything into one function. You break out all the functionality into separate pieces that you can then test and secure separately, thereby increasing the efficiencies and many other things. So that's a really important point that you brought up there. So now I want to talk a little bit more about this BSQ token. So first of all, my very first question is, why 1,000 Satoshis and not 1 Satoshi for the base value of the BSQ token?
That's not super important. I mean, the main reason is to have a reasonable price. And as for transferring a amount in Bitcoin, there is the dust limit. That's 2,730 Satoshi. You cannot send 500 Satoshi to somebody. That will not be accepted by most nodes. So when we would say 1 Satoshi would be 1 BSQ, which was actually initially planned, then you would have the minimum amount what you can send is 2,730. Yeah, everything would be much larger. It's like with altcoins. Some altcoins like Doge have a crazy denomination and you're dealing with millions or billions. And I personally don't like this because I'm bad with remembering the numbers of zeros. I prefer to keep it close to the fiat money. So then when 1 unit of a token is somehow around €1 or €10, something around this, or 0.1 euro, I feel more comfortable. But like when it's 0.001 euro, or like when it's 10,000 euro, both doesn't work well.
So 1,000 Satoshis is still under the dust limit. So how does that work?
Yeah, when you are transferring BSQ, the minimum amount what you can send to another peer is then this 2.73 BSQ, which is technically 2,730 Satoshi. But another important part is like when paying the trading fee, we are invalidating some amount of BSQ, and for that we don't have this limit because we are giving it to the miners technically. And for giving something to the miner, you don't have any limit. You can give some small amount like 1 Satoshi, pay a trading fee of 1 Satoshi or 0.0001 BSQ to the mining fee. And of course, it's difficult to say what will be the value of 1 BSQ. We don't know yet before the market is open, before people are trading it. But when it would be in one extreme that the project will get evaluated like completely crazy, like this ICOs, what's going on, and additionally, the Bitcoin price will go very high, then we would get into a problem that 1 Satoshi would be done already quite a big amount for paying the trading fee. But we tried to find.
Vote on that. You could vote on the change and say, okay, well now new BSQ tokens are going down to 100 Satoshis instead of 1,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? You could just vote on it and make a change.
Yeah, exactly. There are solutions how to change this then, but we try to design it in a way that it's not very likely that we are reaching this point. Hopefully we don't get evaluated with 100 million like crazy ICOs.
Well, I think 1,000 Satoshis. I think 1,000 Satoshis is going to be worth a few $100s at some point, personally.
Yeah, yeah, it can be. Of course, when Bitcoin goes to the roof and has 100,000 euro one Bitcoin, then we're also getting slowly to a problem area. So both need to happen when the value of the project would be a few hundred millions and Bitcoin would be 100,000 one Bitcoin, then we have a little bit of problem and we need to change it. But it's technically possible to change. It's not a big, it's a happy problem at the end.
Yeah, exactly. The easy one. So coming back to the miner thing that you said, I was under the impression that when you pay mining fees so now the BSQ token being used for trading fees. Now, when you say trading fees on Bisq, that's not the same as Bitcoin mining fees that you pay for transactions, is it?
That's additional. Also, in Bisq you have, depending if you're the maker or the taker, you have to pay the transaction fee for the transactions which are included in the trade. And and that we have now with the dynamic fee, so it's always adjusted on the market. And the trading fee, which goes now then to the network when it's paid with BSQ, that's on top of this. And at the moment, we have a dynamic fee model, which is depending on the amount what you trade and on the distance to the market, because we think that when you create an offer with 0%, also exactly on the market, with a very good price basically, then usually it gets taken quickly. You're giving a value to the project. When you create an offer with 20% distance to the market price, you want to make a big deal. Yeah, probably the offer will stick very long. It creates costs for the network because it's peer-to-peer network. Everybody's sharing this data and so on. And it doesn't give a lot of value to the network because probably nobody's interested to buy Bitcoin, which is 20% different to the market price. So when you are very far away, you pay a higher trading fee. When you're closer to the market, you pay very, very low. And
okay. And where do those fees go?
When you pay it in Bitcoin, it goes to the arbitrator. And when you choose to pay it in BSQ, then this BSQ amount will will be used in this transaction as a part of the mining fee. So actually, you pay a little bit less mining fee from that what you are burning, so that the Bitcoin value doesn't get destroyed. So it's just that when you pay, it's 500 BSQ is the default fee, and this 500 BSQ will be used as 500 Bitcoin Satoshi for the mining fee. And but you have lost then 500 BSQ, and because the total supply of the BSQ will be less of this half a BSQ, as 500 Satoshi is half a BSQ. It's a way to distribute this fee to the whole network, because when there's less supply, everybody is a little bit more rich who has tokens depending on their stake. So it's a very easy way to distribute in a fair way to the whole network without technically complicate stuff.
Right.
And
so how do the arbitrators get paid on trades that are being done by BSQ token holders and that are using it? How do they get paid?
The arbitrator is also a contributor. So depending how much the arbitrator will earn with Bitcoin fees, the rest what he want to earn, he will make then a request. I mean, there will be then some formula that per case you get a certain amount, and when this is not covered by the fee what he got in Bitcoin, the difference he will then make a request and get paid like any contributor in BSQ. And we could extend this later. So when the fee payment in Bitcoin to the arbitrator would be more like what he should earn, then we will include other contributors to this fee payment as well. But that's not, we don't think that will happen soon. And when we can do it anyway, when it will be required that every contributor from one issuance cycle, also every month is such a periodic issuance, and all those contributors would be then, depending on their amount what they receive, they would be then the receiver for the Bitcoin trading fee, if that's needed. But that's not planned at the moment. That's for later.
Okay. So let's actually subject to touch on that I definitely wanted to talk about with you. And you mentioned that when users on Bisq use BSQ tokens to pay their trading fee, those get flushed out of the system essentially and get sort of decolored, and they lose their status. Those Satoshis lose their status as BSQ tokens. They go to the miners as a regular Bitcoin fee. Those BSQ tokens are then destroyed. The supply goes down. Everybody's BSQ tokens are theoretically worth a little bit more. Now, what is the long-term issuance model? Or not issuance model, obviously we know how it's done, but what about the numbers? Like, what is the thought behind how the supply of BSQ tokens will grow and shrink over time? Are you planning to sort of make it grow so that it's, like, for example, what's the balance between the issuance model where contributors are compensated in BSQ tokens, and the destruction cycle, which is only use on the platform? So you've got a sort of relationship there where it's kind of non-linear. So what is the plan for, like, I guess everyone's kind of voting on how much BSQ they want to create every month, or like, what is your long-term plan for the supply management?
Yeah, that's a very interesting topic. I mean, you have basically a deflationary and an inflationary side. The users who are paying the trading fee, they're creating deflation because they're taking, I like a lot this term what you used, decolored or uncolored. They're inverting the process. Instead of creating BSQ out of Bitcoin, they are bringing it back to Bitcoin. So they are reducing the supply of BSQ, and they are creating a deflationary pressure. And it depends, of course, how much money is flowing in from there. And that's basically the revenue of the project. So when you take any exchange, we made some market analysis from related projects and so on. I don't want to name numbers because, of course, we don't know the numbers. But it can be a considerable amount of money which gets earned by trading fee per month. And that will be reduced from the supply. So from that, we are basically reducing the total supply, and then every token has more value in relation. And on the other side, you have the inflation by creating new tokens every month, where we are paying every contributor, every worker who is doing anything for the project every month in a cycle. And that's basically like a normal company, yeah, all your costs, what you have per month. And in the beginning, like with every startup or project, in the beginning, you have more costs like revenue. And over time, when you hit the point where the revenue is become bigger, like your costs, then this is flipping. And then in the beginning, we are creating more tokens every month, like what we are destroying. So basically, it's inflation, and the tokens lose a little bit of value. But
let me clarify for our listeners. You're creating more tokens than you are destroying. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And but the value which gets added by the contributors, when I have 5 full-time developers and they're implementing great features and a mobile version and whatever, the value of the project, even if the revenue is not in the same speed or picking up the value of the project, the value of the project is growing, and it should be more like what we are spending. Otherwise, the project is badly managed. So when we are wasting converted in euro amounts of whatever 500,000 every month, and we are not really improving the project, then basically other stakeholder will say, hey, what's going on here? They are managing the project badly. We are forking the project or whatever. And every stakeholder, everybody who owns tokens can be part of this management, because everybody has the vote to accept contribution requests. They can make themselves contribution requests. So when a developer say, yeah, that's bullshit, what's going on there? Yeah, then he's invited to make it better and join and show how it should be done. And I think that's, of course, it's an open model. Nobody knows how it will play out, but actually it depends on the people. When there are enough motivated and right-minded people who see the value in this idea and help and join and be constructive, we're very happy with constructive feedback and criticism and make it better over time. I'm completely aware that the model is not perfect in the beginning. It has to evolve. And it's very clear for me that, I stated it in the document, code is not law. And what we are stating here will change over time. The DAO has to change and has to evolve over time. And that will also be done by voting. When we see certain stuff is not working very well, we have to find how to improve it and how to make it better. But the basic idea is,
so you really don't know, because this is it's really, like I said, non-linear. Like the relationship between the amount of human beings that are requesting new issuance of BSQ to compensate them for contributing to the project, and the actual users just spending their BSQ tokens on trades. Those are not directly related at all. It's very indirect. I mean, yes, they're related in the sense that they have an effect on the supply that is in opposite directions, but they really don't have much to do with each other on an economic basis.
Yeah, but I think actually it's not very different to a normal startup. They got money from investors, and in the first years, the investors don't expect that the revenue will cover their investments. And when the project takes off and it becomes creates revenue, then more money gets created, like the investors had put in the money, and then they make profit and benefit.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, because that's true. That's I didn't catch that. You're right. So you're expecting inflationary pressures in the beginning as the project is getting off the ground, and then later you're possibly expecting a bit of deflationary pressure as there's as the use of the platform increases greatly over time, but the contributors maybe are, let's say the contributors are growing arithmetically. You got 10 one day, 13 the next, 17 the next, but the users might grow 10, 100, 1,000. So
exactly.
So it's a bit of a deflationary model, and that's okay. So this is something I hadn't quite sussed out from the white paper. So there is a bit of a, because you definitely don't expect the contributors to grow as fast as the users.
Yeah, it's actually one thing what I'm a little bit concerned because the costs, as you said, they will grow linearly when we have, I mean, at the moment we have more or less 20,000 users who are downloading every release. When we have 2 million users, we have maybe 10 times more people, but we will not have 100 times more people, but the revenue will be 100 times higher. So it can be that the deflationary pressure will be really, really large, and the value of one token will become too high that we need, like we said before, change the denomination of the tokens.
Yeah, so that point could happen in like a year or even 9 months if things really take off, where everyone agrees, oh my God, we gotta split the BSQ tokens. Like just briefly, how would the devaluation work?
We haven't thought about the details how to do it. One way would be, I mean, the initial distribution is created by injecting 25 Bitcoin. This is what we have received on our donation address. And this 25 Bitcoin are technically...
that's the seed capital. It's $50,000 bucks. That's
exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's 2.5 million BSQ, and that's 25 billion Satoshi. And when we would use 250 Bitcoin as this injection, we would have a potence of 10 more in the denomination. So one way would be when we see we need.
You could make them divisible, right? You could do tenths or hundredths of a BSQ.
Yeah, I mean, one limit with for the fee payment, we cannot go lower like 1 Satoshi, but there might be different models. One thing is that we are decreasing the fee. So when we have 2 million users, maybe we decide, and also the fee will be decided by the voting. Maybe the majority of the users, of the stakeholders are users, and they want to have low fees. And then they say, okay, let's lower the fee. We don't need to earn so much. We want to use the platform. And I think that's actually really a very different concept, like normal startups and so on. They are based on profit maximization. That's the core of capitalism. And in my opinion, the DAO, and I go a little bit back, in the late 90s, I observed a project which was called Google Will Eat Itself, from a Swiss artist, and it was a fantastic idea. He was setting up fake web pages where he earned revenue from Google ads. And with his revenue, he was buying Google shares and put it in a foundation and wanted to distribute it to the world. So it was basically buying up Google by the revenue what Google is putting out by the advertisings, and buying the company because he thought that such important infrastructure like Google should be in the hand of all the users and all the people, and not the commercial company, which is based on profit maximization and not based on a common good to serve the people who are using it. And that was for me actually one of the core ideas of a DAO. And I always wanted to build something in a project, and so, and I did some similar models when I was doing online games. I worked together with the people in this way that we were sharing.
Yeah, because there's an economy, right? There's an economy inside the game. Right?
Exactly, yeah. And now we have this great feature that we have programmable money with Bitcoin. So we can design our way how we want to use the money in the system, and the money becomes really a functional element in the infrastructure and in the economy, and will create, but that depends on the people, but it can create also a new, how to say it, a new definition of how markets, how capitalism works, because it doesn't need to work always on profit maximization, because some people, they are happy when they earn enough to make their living, and they want to do something which has real value. Many people who are earning enough, they get a crisis that they say, hey, yeah, I'm working for this fucking company doing bullshit for the work. I know I'm doing stuff which doesn't make the world a better place. Why? I have the luxury that I quit my job and do something where I really believe on, and where I think that makes sense, that makes the world a better place. And
but, you know, I think in a sense that is a false dichotomy, because you know you've got profit on one side and the common good on the other. But I think if you are clever, you have things like conscious capitalism, where you've got somebody who comes up with a profit model that is also happens to be in the common good. So I love the fact, and that's, I think that's, and by saying that, I'm not countering actually anything you're saying. In fact, I think DAOs are a perfect example of that. You actually are maximizing profit for the most people. It's just not centralized and concentrated in the top of a pyramid. Instead, you have a network where all the nodes are actually getting all that profit. So if you are to analyze the profit model of a network in comparison to a hierarchy, it may produce 1 billion times more profit. It's just that maybe none of the nodes are as rich as the peak of the hierarchy guy, but on the whole, maybe you've got way more, because you've got Reed's law and Metcalfe's law. I was just tweeting about this yesterday. I did a mini tweet storm about the Bitcoin value. Like, network value math is insanely huge. People don't realize that what a difference networks are. Now, I'm not saying that Reed's law is gonna determine the price of Bitcoin. If it was, you get numbers that are so high that like it's more than the atoms in the universe and stuff. But still, it's very powerful, and this whole concept is great. So keep talking.
Yeah, I think really, I mean, and it depends on the people who are involved in the DAO. When my perfect result would be when all the users are stakeholders, and then probably will keep the trading fee very low, because they are users. They want to have a low trading fee. They just want to have enough to pay all what they cannot do, like developers or specialists who are doing some special stuff, that they are motivated enough to work for the project. Because when you don't pay them, you don't find enough altruistic, motivated people who work for free. And they want to they want to get the best platform, the best features, and so on. And of course, they want to earn some money. But when basically they are funding it themselves or with the trading fee, they don't want to have Uber-style profit maximization or whatever, because it's not one person or if you have a small group of investors who are taking all the profits. It's all the users and all the stakeholders in the DAO who are basically they're benefiting from the profit what comes in, and who are sharing and who are designing how much and how it should look like.
Yeah, that's why the concept of the DAO is so powerful, and it's something that's enabled by Bitcoin in a way. You couldn't have done this before Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is sort of shunting value into open source software, into the open source software world from electricity, right? So they're spending, the miners are expending this power from the world of atoms, and that value is getting shunted into the world of bits, and it moves around lightning fast. It creates all sorts of incredible possibilities for organizing incentive around common goals. And obviously, Bisq is a project that's directly involved with moving value around. So the possibilities for creating a system like this that has incentives that are strong is a little bit clearer than maybe other open source software projects, but I think even with other open source software projects, what many people in our world have lost sight of, sort of most regular people have lost sight of in our world, is that money is a representation of effort that's gone into the world that other people also find useful for them. In other words, it's a symbol. Money is a symbol for effort that's gone into the world that other people value. And like software that is useful to people is something that they value. And so you can always bring in a monetary element into it in order to make it work in a DAO type setting like this. And so it's really exactly the type of thing that I was, what part of my mind blow in 2013, I came to Bitcoin a couple years later than you, was like, oh wow, this the programmable money aspect enables a huge amount of innovation that's been not possible before. So
yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's the tool. I mean, Vitalik Buterin said it in a very early interview that Bitcoin that money is a transition or technology. And I think we can go to a much more rich meaning of what we are calling now money. I would prefer to call it a value exchange, a flow for value, a token, a tool for exchanging and for making the flow of value cross boundaries possible, because you don't need it in a family or in a group of friends, because you have your social exchange of value.
And that's the trust connection.
Yeah, but when you're trading with, or when you're exchanging with random people on the internet, yeah, that's all missing, and you need some proper system like Bitcoin to have a possibility to exchange value. And we are actually doing it with the DAO. I made the request for all the people who have contributed anything, if they have traded, if they have been public on the forum, on the social networks, if they have developed something, translators. Also, people who are developing other open source libraries, what we are using, like Bitcoin J or this Tom peer-to-peer library, which I used and which is not used anymore. But I contacted this guy to tell him, hey, make your requests. You should get a part of this also.
So I just want to emphasize this to all of our listeners. If you have been a market maker using Bitsquare or Bisq, and or if you've contributed at all to this project, you now have the opportunity to be a part of the initial issuance of BSQ tokens.
Yeah, we had the deadline initially until I think Friday, but we will extend it. The main reason why we had a quite short deadline of about 2 weeks was because we are planning to release the DAO very soon. But with uncertainty what happens with SegWit activation in August or not, we want to wait a little bit more to get a little bit better picture how the Bitcoin network will look like in August, because when there would be a fork or whatever, it would be also forked in the DAO, and that would be quite messy. So we will delay the launch of the DAO, probably. Yeah, depends how it plays out in August. As soon as SegWit is activated, we are ready, basically. And that doesn't mean that we are using SegWit. It's just that when we don't have a risk that there is a fork in Bitcoin. And with that, we will extend this time for people who can make a request for their contribution. Many people still have not read our forum and so, and I didn't have time to make a lot of promotion for this. So everybody is invited. We really have the intention to make a very wide distribution, a few hundred people. We don't know exactly the number, but something like 300-400 is the goal. And anybody, like a friend of mine said the other day, this DAO is the native form of the native funding model for open source projects. Most open source projects, they are lacking that they don't get paid for anything, because they are often used by other projects who are making a lot of money with their library, with their software. But when they're not running themselves a company or whatever where they're using this, they don't make money. And I think that's really a pity, because there's so much potential, and many more people would contribute to this economy, to this open source economy and sharing economy, when there would be a revenue model.
They will. I mean, this is exactly the type of incentive aligning project that's going to increase that participation. I mean, it's just incredible. The vision is incredible. I'm hoping the reality is also.
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic, and I see it already since we started the publishing of the DAO paper and the compensation request. We got a few new developers who are super active, and I think there are quite a lot of people who are really motivated, and that's a good thing. It's a kind of filter. We're getting the people who really like this idea, who are motivated, and as everybody in a company knows, those people who are highly motivated, they produce much more value, like another who is just in for the money. And and that's also for me. I mean, people didn't expect this. There was never a promise that we are doing this. It was always a plan from the very beginning, but it was never clear if we ever can do it. And so it was never a promise for a reward or whatever. And yeah, for me, it's a counter model to this greed-driven models where we see, unfortunately, way too much in the ecosystem, especially the ICOs, or like you mentioned before, the Ethereum, the DAO, which was a completely disaster. And by the way, I tried to find another name for the Bisq DAO and used another name initially. I called it Synergetic Cooperation, SYNCO. But yeah, I saw that people don't understand it, and you always need to explain it. And the DAO was already somehow.
I think it's great. I think this is a perfect rehabilitation of the term, so that's awesome.
Exactly. I also thought that, I mean, it was such a pity that the DAO, squatted the general purpose term as a brand and destroyed the brand completely with the bullshit what they were doing. And I think the term is very good. As a decentralized autonomous organization, it expresses very good what it's about. And I think it's valid to try to prove that the system can work when it's not driven by greed, but when it's driven by the idea that it's driven by the intention to have a community, that the community is the ownership and the managers of the project. It's
right.
in the hand of the people.
Yeah. So I want to come back to a couple of nuts and bolts things actually right now. First of all, one thing that occurred to me was we were mentioning the trading fees and saying, okay, we can change the trading fees through the voting process. But what about a floating, fee market for arbitrators in Bitsquare, where the arbitrators could bid on offers? Is that too slow of a process? Or, I mean, I guess you could automate it too. You could say, okay, I'm an arbitrator and I'm not going to accept anything less than 2 BSQs or whatever it is, or excuse me, it's 600 Satoshi or whatever it is. Is that something that could conceivably be built?
Yeah, theoretically, yes. With the arbitrators, they're a sensitive area because they are as in the future model at the moment, I'm the only arbitrator because we still have not a decentralized arbitration system, and we didn't have a very good solution how to do it. We had some ideas, but now with the DAO, we have a very good solution. As the arbitrator in future has to lock up quite a lot of money, basically much more money in BSQ, like he could steal, because the arbitrator theoretically he could collude with the other trader and can make a scam. And if something like this would happen, then the scammed peer could make a request for confiscating this locked up BSQ from the arbitrator, and the arbitrator would lose much more, like right. He is winning. And it's basically a qualified work. He need to know a lot about the project and also a little bit about the technical stuff, because there are bugs and there are some issues where you have to have some knowledge about the project to make to help the people. It's a kind of like a customer care job.
Right. Yeah.
Available. I mean, when the arbitrator is just going on holiday and forget to revoke his arbitration client, then people get stuck and have to wait and get disappointed. So there are a few stuff where I don't want to have that everybody can very easily become an arbitrator and create damage then for the whole brand, for the system, because people get disappointed.
So do you think there will be voting on sort of issuance of arbitration licenses?
The current idea is that we're starting with a quite high amount, as when we have then, that's in the third phase, as we are developing the DAO in several phases. It starts with the Genesis transaction, and where you can pay the trading fee and where you can trade it on the market. And in the second phase, there will be included the voting and the monthly issuance for the contributors. And in the third phase, there will be then included this this locking up of security deposit for the arbitrator. We also introduced a mediator, so that before it goes to the arbitrator, there will be another layer, a mediator, who is basically the same like an arbitrator, but he doesn't have the key. He cannot steal the money because he has no key for signing. He's just a customer care agent.
Oh, wow, and they get paid too.
Yeah, he's a contributor. He doesn't receive the trading fee, or maybe that's not 100% defined yet. But the most important that there is no security risk with the mediator because he cannot make a damage. The worst what he can do is that he's not working very qualified, and then you get kicked out. But when
that's interesting. So the mediators are going to be issuing requests for the BSQ, the new BSQ.
Exactly, they're like a normal contributor every month. Depending on the cases, they get paid for this. And the media is really, and that's actually, from my experience from arbitration cases, 99% are really
just a confusion. It's not actually anything that needs to be arbitrated. So it's like you're splitting up the role of customer service agent and like account manager or something.
Yeah, as a matter, arbitrator with the key, he's a judge in a way. He can really, when there would be a dispute, and actually there was not a single real dispute. There was never a case that said, one peer said, yeah, I've sent the money, and the other, no, I have not received it. It was usually then bank problems that happens, that it was not received, and the bank took too long or whatever, or bugs or whatever. But there was not a single dispute. And yeah, the huge majority is just customer care stuff, usability problems, bank problems, software bugs, mistakes what users are doing, that they're putting in the wrong bank account number or whatever.
That really helps me, because I was looking at it going, wait, arbitrators and mediators, what's that? Okay, that makes sense. So yeah. I want to talk, just go through the BSQ functionality a little bit more. So you fund the contributions, of course, through the voting process. You use the actual BSQ tokens for voting. Now, are you just signing things with the BSQ software with your tokens, or do you actually have to spend them and destroy them to vote?
Yeah, as the voting is a transaction, technically a Bitcoin transaction, where you have to pay a fee that will be that can be changed in over voting also. And in the paper, we have defined some numbers, but that still can change. It should not be, I mean, the whole model with the voting is not a democratic model. It's a meritocratic model. So those people who are really have something on stake, who are interested in the project, who are taking their time to understand what's going on, because it doesn't make sense when a user with a lot of money who is not following development or whatever is going on, and then he make random votes, then it's not a good manager. I mean, you don't want to have a manager in a company who just jumps in once a month and then say, this one get fired and this one get 3 times more like he should get or whatever. That will not work. So it should be the people who vote, they really should know about the project. Basically, it should be mainly driven by the contributors who are really know what's going on, who are informed about the project. And the fee, what people have to pay for the voting, should be a regulation that we see when too many people are voting and we get strange results that, that not motivated, not well-informed people are voting too much, then we can increase the fee. So they have less motivation to vote.
And is this a BSQ fee or a Bitcoin fee?
That's a BSQ fee.
And with the BSQ, once again, would they, when you pay a voting fee, is that BSQ being destroyed?
Yeah, that's the same like with the trading fee. And the same is with the contribution request, that we're not getting spammed, that everybody who make a Twitter tweet and then 100 BSQ for this, that doesn't make sense, of course, and will just blow up their effort for the people who are then verifying, evaluating their contributions. So that spam protection, basically, there is also a fee included. And
yes,
yeah,
great. That makes sense. Awesome. And so you have decentralization of the arbitration system. What exactly is the relationship between the BSQ token and the decentralization of the arbitration there? I mean, obviously they get paid in it, but how does that affect the decentralization?
Yeah, that is this problem, what I said before. It was from beginning planned to make the arbitration system really decentralized, but I didn't have time yet to implement it. And the arbitrator is in a certain amount the security risk, because when I would collude with one trader and could steal the other, I would destroy my project, so I would be very stupid. But basically, I could do it theoretically. So people need to trust me in a way. So that's not perfectly decentralized and trustless at the moment. And it was always difficult how to make it really decentralized in a peer-to-peer way where you don't have. We had some ideas, but it was never perfect. And now with the BSQ, we can define that there will be a special transaction with a special op return, and that is the login transaction. So you are logging in, whatever, 20,000 BSQ, and you make a transaction, you send it to yourself. So you are the controller of this. There's no multi-stakeholder or a foundation or whatever. You are just sending yourself BSQ with a special op return. And that means for the network, this BSQ are locked. Nobody can accept. You cannot spend this anymore. Then that you need to become an arbitrator. When you revoke after whatever, half a year or so, you don't want to be an arbitrator anymore and you want to step out, you make another transaction from that what you have received from the receiving address of this locked transaction, make an unlocked transaction. And this transaction also has a special op return, which means that nobody can use or will accept the output of this transaction in a certain time. Also, there's an unlocking time, which is something like 2 months. So the community has enough time. If the arbitrator would have been a scammer, then there would be a voting and a confiscation process, and that takes some time. So
that's what that was about. I was wondering what that. Okay, yeah. Wow, that's heavy. So you actually have a confiscation vote. Boy, oh boy. That could be pretty gameable if somebody can do maybe a long-term thing and be like, cool, this is going to be our big heist or something. Maybe.
Yeah, there are many security guards to not that it cannot be abused, because of course that's a very critical element. But first, the person who has been scammed, he need to provide completely bulletproof evidence. And you need to pay a very high fee for such a request for for freezing the money or for destroying the money of an arbitrator. Something really in the amount of 500 euro, 1,000 euros. So nobody will just try it. That's really only in very serious cases. Then there will be a voting. It needs a supermajority, something of 80% of all the stakeholders need to vote on it. Also a very high quorum. So when just a few, you need something like 30% of all the stakeholders need to vote at all, otherwise it's not accepted. And then as the last security level, there will be a hard fork or a software release where this confiscation will be implemented in code. It's basically like a hard fork, and the users need to agree to install and to upgrade to this hard fork. When the users say no, the stakeholders are corrupt and they're just to try to scam an arbitrator, they will not update the software and will reject it. And they can, the developers and the stakeholders can do whatever they want, but when the users are not upgrading the software, they are powerless, like we see.
Wow, that's heavy. So the continuity of the BSQ tokens, they don't have it's not its own blockchain, but it has a similar hard forking functionality to a blockchain. And so you could end up with attacks on the Bisq project where you have, Bisq XT and Bisq Classic and Bisq NG and Bisq One. Boy, oh boy, that sounds like a nice long-term scam for one of these anonymous scammer people who have been look for these opportunities in the alt market and things like that. Boy, find this project and be like, cool. I'll set up this arbitration account and then do this thing and then do a Sybil attack on the vote and boom, I have taken over the Bisq project.
Yeah, nobody knows how it plays out, but actually it depends on the community. When the majority of community is just reading Reddit bullshit and are not profoundly informed and are aggressive and like we see a lot in the space, unfortunately, it's not very cool what we see, what's going on everywhere. When that's the reality and the majority, okay, then the DAO will fail and the world is not deserving such a model. They are not ready for it. Maybe it works another time in 30 years with a new generation, but then people are not ready for such stuff. And that's a possibility.
there's that, and then that would be like a total disaster. But then, I mean, just what I was just saying is, of course, hypothetical. But a hard fork is not the end of the world, like you said. The jerky jerks could go and have their own Bisq, and then Gabriel and Manfred can trade Bitcoin and fiat back and forth on our Bisq.
Yeah, I mean the fork risk is it's a two-sided sword. On the one side, I want to be open with software, and I like very much the idea of open source and the real open source, or the GPL license. And it depends on you're trusting basically the people that they are not abusing this power. What you give a lot of power to the people. Everybody can steal your work and can act unethically, and yeah, can steal your work and fork unethically. I mean, there are ethical forks, like it happened with Ethereum Classic. Ethereum were violating a base principle of blockchains, that they're rewriting history, and that's for me a clear reason to fork a project. And that's a perfect protection, that when there's at least a certain amount in the community who are completely disagreeing with what's going on in the project, they can fork away and can stick with the original version. And that's a kind of like insurance for the project. When there would be when their main stakeholders, and that's the important part, over time, the voting will shift to reputation. Reputation means that the contributors, the more they have worked in the past, the higher they have a reputation. So yeah, the more you have earned, the more influence you will get in voting. And
so instead of just the BSQ tokens, which are sellable, you can have it also tied to these nodes where you've got a reputation. So your BSQ are going to buy you more votes than another random person who just bought some BSQs on a market?
Yeah, actually, as soon as we are starting this phase 2 with the monthly issuance, every contributor is already collecting reputation every month. Yeah, when you're working for the project and you get paid every month for whatever amount of BSQ, this data is already in the blockchain and in the system, and you can use this data for representing reputation. And it's just not planned initially because it's not so central and we don't have time to do everything at once. But the data is there from day one. And later we can use this data when over time we see there are certain persons who have worked a lot, and they have, with their work, they have earned a lot of BSQ. That's a direct representation of their work. Then based on this, yeah, you can call it a token, but basically it's just the data which is in the blockchain from this payment, or from this issuance, what the contributors made to themselves. And the voting, the weight of the voting will, my intention is to have it 70% of the total weight will be for this reputation, and only 30% will be by pure stake, by pure holding.
Wow, intense. Okay, wow, interesting. So then there's a definite political element there too, where you can kind of jockey for position in the community and try to influence people into thinking that you're awesome. So hopefully that aligns up well with actually being awesome, right?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I'm not too concerned that it goes in the wrong way. I'm more concerned. The reason why I do this is because it happened, and it happened in some blockchains that some whale were buying a majority of the tokens, and then they made a lot of damage, or they were not well motivated. And those people who are working long term for the project, they want to continue to work, so they have much more future stake in the project, like a normal investor. When we would have a pure stake-based model, then somebody could make a shorting. Somebody would make a terrible bad decision and destroy the project, make a shorting on Bitfinex or wherever, and earn a lot of money. It would be economically reasonable for him to do this, short-term profit, and he cash out and has destroyed the project, and he don't care. A long-term contributor who is working on the project is much unlikely that he's doing it, and there will not be one contributor, hopefully, who is doing all the work. But
right, so it's a protection against market manipulation and the sort of side effects of having a tradable token, where you can, anybody can sell, unless you've locked it, anybody can transfer BSQ back and forth. You could use it as a currency if you wanted.
Exactly, yeah. And
but it's probably not in your interest to increase the money velocity of BSQ tokens all that much, because it's only 30% of the voting power, right?
Yeah, a whale who is not, who has who has interests in the project which are not positive for the project. And we see this in Bitcoin. There are very rich persons in the Bitcoin scene who are promoting stuff which are, in my opinion, not good for Bitcoin. Right. And it's good that we don't have a voting system based on stake only in Bitcoin, because that wouldn't be good results.
Right, exactly. Interesting.
When we compare it with Bitcoin, when we would have a governance model with voting or whatever, I would opt for a governance model where those people who have worked the most, like the core developers, have the most influence rather than people with a lot of money. Because that relates much more for me to the core of the value of the project.
Right, and keeping it subjective in Bisq is protects against other. It doesn't protect against political machinations, but it protects against other sort of mechanistic, attacks, like saying, okay, I just submitted, if it's based on GitHub pull requests, I just submitted a bunch of typo, like I did in the Bisq DAO, because I was like reading it and just corrected some proofreading. I'm not really expecting too much in the way of BSQ contribution, issuance to compensate me for that. But in any case, I want to come back a little bit to the initial BSQ issuance. Of course, right now, Bisq is not a DAO yet. Bisq is not a DAO. It's centralized. There's this guy, Manfred Karrer. He's the guy who wrote most of it. He's the obvious project leader. He's the guy calling a lot of the shots. And so how will the initial compensation requests be decided?
The final decision I do with one of the main contributors, mainly also because we want to protect privacy of the people. The contributors don't want that the whole world knows what they will receive and so. And we are still not completely decided how will be the distribution and how transparent we will be. I think we don't need to be so transparent like a normal ICO project, because we are not asking for money. We are doing voluntarily, giving away the value to all the contributors. So
I mean, you guys are the ones, if you two are the main contributors to the project software, and the software got X amount of donations, 25 Bitcoin in donations, then who better to decide where to shunt that money, right?
Yeah, and it's also because I mean, many of the contributors, I had directly contact with the people. I have the information there. Many of the other from the team who are involved in actual work at the moment, they are not so well informed about all the details. And especially it goes back 3.5 years. There are contributors who have contributed in the first year and they will receive something. Many of the current people who are working at the project, they have not been part, so they don't know about this. And it's for sure a challenge and difficult to make a fair and a good distribution. I will try to make it as broad as possible. I try to make.
Hey, it's voluntary. It's voluntary. If you're asking, if you're sending a request, you're signing up to have that decision made, and whatever decision's final.
It's a donation, basically. We got donation, and now we are donating back to the people who I think deserve something. But it's a pure donation.
It's very voluntary, this whole process.
And finally, we will probably, we'll put aside some funds in BSQ for legal contingency funds, because it's a politically disruptive project, and you never know how it plays out. So we don't want to get shocked in some point in the future, and we want to have some reserve for this. And we want to, we will put aside quite a lot of tokens for the next months for developing the second phase. And I really want to scale up development team and want to have something like 5 full-time developers and somebody who helps on the communication side full-time. And for paying these people market rate salaries, we put aside quite a big chunk also. And the rest will be distributed between different groups. One group is the market makers, also the traders who have helped us with liquidity and use the software. often they are mixed, that they have help also on communications on the forum, with support, with testing, all kind of stuff, translation, also this broader community. And then the more narrow group of contributors with whom I had directly contact, with whom I work directly, who I know personally, and so on. And all in all, the first two groups should be something like 150 people in every group. I will cap it then. There should not be thousands of people, because also the transaction will be then too big. There are also some limits. And the other group is something like about 50 people probably. So yeah, the target is to have something like maybe 400 people who are receiving something, and probably something like 40 or 50% get distributed to this wide group of people, and then the legal contingency funds get quite a big chunk, and the reserved funds for the salaries for the time between phase 1 and phase 2, because a contributor cannot make a contribution request before the phase 2 is implemented. And we want to have enough time and enough funds.
Yeah, you have to build it out in the software in order to enable all these features that are in the white paper, right?
Exactly, yeah. And that's the complex part. Also, the first phase is not so super complex, but the second phase with the voting and everything is quite tricky. Yeah. You have to do it right and professional. Yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry. I think you have muted yourself.
Yes, I muted myself. I want to just hit the last item on the, thank you, on this list in the white paper for the VSQ token, security deposit for enabling further decentralization. So the security deposit, is this a trade deposit like we have now with Bisq, where you have to put in some extra Bitcoin with your trade that you get back later for the insurance, or what does this refer to?
No, it's the same what we use for our arbitration system. Also, it's a security deposit in BSQ using this special transaction, log in and log out. And when something goes wrong, or when this person who has locked up these funds is abusing his role, then the community has the power to compensate.
Oh, wow! Oh my God! So this is for every contributor, so not just arbitrators.
No, that's there are certain roles which are hard to decentralize. Like, for instance, I have the domain, the right for the domain for the Bisq IQ. I could become crazy and could make, or maybe I get under the pressure of whatever agencies, and I do strange stuff. And then, I have in future I have to lock up money for this right, because that's centralized. We cannot decentralized domain rights to a community. That doesn't work. And when I would abuse this right, then the community can decide, Manfred is on the other side of the world, and he should not deserve to have this money anymore. So we take it away from him. And another thing is the Git, the right for deploying the software, for signing the software, for making the merging the pull requests and so on. We want to follow the model what's used in Bitcoin, also with ACK and NACK, also acknowledge and not acknowledge for pull requests, and so later when we have more developers. And to get in this position, to be in this powerful position, every developer who have the right to acknowledge or not acknowledge a pull request have to lock up some money. He get paid for this, because it's, of course, nobody wants to lock up money and take some risk. So it's a form of a contribution, a service for the project, and he gets paid he get every month he get paid for this for providing this service, for taking this risk.
Oh man, I'm really glad I asked. That is so crazy. It's going to be amazing to see how the politics play out in the entire ecosystem. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is a fantastic example what can go wrong. I mean, we see a lot, like with Gavin and Greason, who made strange stuff in the past with Greg Wright and so, and then they took away his commit right, because they were not sure if he got hacked or whatever, whatever happened. And I think that's a good, but beside this, there are no mechanisms when the majority of the core developers became corrupt or whatever. But you can do nothing. And Then there's only the fork risk, and we have here a few additional tools what we can use. And another issue is, we have the seed nodes, which are a little bit, not really critical elements, but they're a little bit centralized nodes. So the first time when you're connecting to the peer-to-peer network, you're connecting to a seed node and you get initial data. And so when somebody who is operating a seed node would abuse this and would do something bad, he also would get confiscated his security deposit, and that creates
So you can use this. You can use this BSQ lockup functionality for various incentive areas of the ecosystem. That's really, really interesting, and then you can vote on all that stuff.
Yeah, there are a few privileged roles, like the ones who are deploying the software and signing the software. They are in a privileged role. People are trusting them, and to have extra security, we have this security.
So that's really interesting. That gives just another sort of tool in the toolbox to push incentive here and there and see what happens. Boy, that's going to be really interesting. I mean, there's definitely attack vectors, as with every system like this, and I think it's good. I think it's great. And one of the things that has occurred to me over the last year or so that I haven't had that much of a chance to dive into it all for my fans out there and stuff. I just want to kind of mention this. And no one had figured out how to make decentralized money until Bitcoin in 2008 and 2009. And once it took off, it really surprised most people in 2010. And then, of course, in 2011, when the price really got sort of solidified and it really became a genuine commodity on the market, and the ecosystem was worth a few $100 million or whatever. And I want to just emphasize that Bitcoin was just the first one to work. And I think one of the reasons why we're seeing all these altcoins out there is not just speculation, and not just because they're also based on Bitcoin. It's also because this is a brand new terra incognita. We all need to find out what works and what don't. And I think that the area is a lot wider than some people assume. And there is room for a lot of different incentive structures that are inspired by or sort of surrounding Bitcoin in the multidimensional space of incentive design or social, technological ecosystem creation. And I think there's a lot of possibilities that totally unexplored. And DAOs is one of the ones where we've seen a lot of sort of fake projects, a lot of very, very pie in the sky bullshit, and maybe some cooler projects. As many people know, I'm a big fan of MadeSafe. I think that is another sort of model that's a little bit farther away from Bitcoin and quite different that could also work. And I think Bisq is something that's kind of like very close to Bitcoin, sort of Bitcoin adjacent, it's on a literal level and on a figurative level in this multidimensional space of what are the possible systems that can work. And so I think this is an amazing experiment in that sense. And I have a feeling that you could really pull this off. And that's kind of a good segue. The show's going a bit long, but I kind of want to just continue on this. We're having a great time. I think our listeners are too. I'd like to get to listener questions if there are any interesting ones. I don't know. You guys are mostly trolls, so no, just kidding. We'll see what Thomas has gotten together, assembled for us. He's mad shout out to Mad Bitcoins right now. Thank you so much for handling the chat and helping us along here in whatever way that you can. So I want to talk about the future of Bitsquare because of course, Bisq is right now very unlike the centralized Bitcoin exchanges that are out there, which have much more like traditional finance market exchanges where you have big servers crunching a lot of numbers. You have centralized custodial functions being played by these exchange corporations all around the world. In other words, you send your dollars or other fiat or Bitcoin to these exchanges, and they hold the private keys, they hold the bank account, They hold that money, but you can trade back and forth super fast when you're on the platform. However, you don't really own the money while it's there. They have an IOU, and they'll probably pay it back to you, because very few of them are going to be doing anything fractional reserve until they get hacked, which happens quite often. So it's a situation where there's a lot of trust involved, but what you get back is quick trades. Is there a possibility that Bisq could mature into the type of exchange that might allow high frequency or relatively high frequency trading, say using the Lightning Network eventually? Is there a vision for Bisq possibly being a major market maker in the space?
Everything is possible. I just see it as, I mean, most people who are professional traders and so high frequency traders, they are not interested in holding the Bitcoin or the euro. They want to make profit from price differences. And I think we should distinguish between the onboarding exchange, where people really
on-ramps. On-ramps.
Where people really want to get the Bitcoin or sell it for euro. They really want to exchange it as the classical exchange.
And they're sharing the platforms with the professional traders, and it's not really a good match. Whereas a Bisq is a much better onboarding, because they can do it very privately. There's no trust involved. And I just want to clarify that Bisq is quite the opposite of the centralized exchanges, not only in the sense that you're not trusting anybody else to hold your money at any time, but also because, well, other than the arbitrators, but that's very, very minimal in compared to centralized exchanges, but also because it's like these atomic trades where it's just one trade, this amount of Bitcoin for this amount of fiat, and we're done. It's not like you're going to set up a market trade with stops and all limits and all sorts of different market offers and things like that. It's just one for one, 26 Bitcoin for, 50 grand, boom, we're done. Well, actually, you can't trade more than one Bitcoin in one offer now, but the principle applies. It's very atomic in comparison, and you can't, like Manfred was saying, you can't use it as a trader to do quick trades back and forth and make money off of differences.
Maybe there are possibilities in future with Lightning and so on. We don't know yet exactly how this will play out, but my main offer for those, and that's actually planned for the mid or long-term future. I'm not sure if you or the listeners are familiar with this concept of a contract for different, CFD. It's a form of betting. You are betting on price movements or price differences. I will say I put in one Bitcoin that the price in 1 week is whatever, $3,000, and you say, no, I bet against this, and depending who is the winner, who gets the money out. And for that, you are not moving euro or Bitcoin. You're just putting in the Bitcoin in a bet, and the winner is getting out, basically. And for such a system, that can work much, much easier, because, I mean, with the fiat trade, our main bottleneck is, and the main problem at all, is their banking system. It's external from Bisq, but they are very, depending which method you're using. But for SEPA in Europe, it's quite slow, minimum 1 day, often 2 or 3 days. We cannot speed this up, basically. When it's altcoin trading, we are working at the moment also on APIs. And with altcoin, we want to make it fully automated, so you can trade with trading bots, fully automated altcoin trade. But then the only limit is the Bitcoin confirmation time, which is usually 10 minutes. And on the altcoin side of confirmation time, they're usually often shorter, but also a few minutes. And to get away from this restriction, you need then something like Lightning or whatever will develop in future, maybe Drive Chain, whatever we'll see. I have not
cross-chain swaps, things like that.
That's a very interesting thing. So as soon as SegWit is out, because that was the main hurdle with malleability, that these ideas of atomic cross swaps were not safe with malleability. When SegWit is out, that can be implemented. Maybe we will implement it as well for some major currency pairs. And with that, you can, and actually a BSQ will be traded also on Bisq against Bitcoin. And as it is a Bitcoin, it's one in one chain. We could, and that's planned also for future, to have a trustless exchange for BSQ to Bitcoin, because it's not even a cross chain swap. It's only one transaction. You are putting in some Bitcoin in, as input in one transaction, some BSQ from the other user in one transaction. You're swapping the outputs. That's it. So it's completely trustless and fast. And I think there is quite a lot of headroom, but I think it's more interesting to separate these different types of traders, that those traders who are interested in speculation, they get a different tool, like a contract for difference. I think it can be done in a decentralized and peer-to-peer way. It's complex and difficult, and we didn't have time to get deep into this, but I discussed with some people some ideas, and I think it can work out. And
well, it's interesting you bring up CFDs, because the famous problem with the decentralized CFD is the oracle risk, or even with centralized ones. So oracle, what I'm speaking about there for our audience, in case you don't know, is there's the CFD is the thing you're betting on something changing up and down. It's really just like any bet, but of course there's a data input where the result of the bet needs to come in from external to the system. It's one thing if you're betting on something inside the Bitcoin blockchain that everyone agrees on, some piece of data that hits a block. But most things you're betting on, like price, for example, against fiat, that's all centralized, APIs. And so kind of what I was getting at a little bit with that question was, if Bisq can become a market maker, then you can have a decentralized oracle for price movements.
Exactly, that's a very interesting input, and I actually got a request from a very famous person, but I don't want to name him because I don't know if he is okay to make it public. But he was very interested in this, to use Bitsquare or Bisq as provider for a trust minimize data. For instance, also the price feed, when there is enough liquidity and volume. The price in BSQ is all is completely open and decentralized. We cannot manipulate it. When you get the price from a centralized exchange, you're basically believing them that they are not making up the numbers, and they can do it, and some will do it in a certain way when it makes some benefits for them. You have to trust them.
Couldn't Bisq separate out the trading functionality from the withdrawal functionality and have a similar situation where you've got trading coin and wallet coin, and you've got stuff tied up in payment channels to do quick trades back and forth. I guess the problem with that is that you don't have any fiat, so you still have to have some sort of multi-signature. I mean, can you use Lightning with multi-sig? No, you can't.
I have not looked too close into Lightning Network. I read the paper, but I didn't have time to get deeper.
Well, I guess it wouldn't have to be Lightning. I guess just any payment channels. But I get. Can you use?
I think
basically with payment channels.
Basically, it should work, but I think it has a few challenges. But I'm not. I don't know the details, and I didn't have to look closer to it. But it's certainly a very interesting direction, and we will look when it's there into it, how we can utilize it. And I think the main problem is that when you go to the fiat, or when you're doing a real exchange, you want to have a settlement, and the settlement happens on the Bitcoin blockchain. You don't want to get an IOU, and that depends on it can work in a way that you keep a channel open and everybody have enough security deposit that the channel is secured in a way. And then you can speed up a lot, because then you don't need to wait for confirmations. But I cannot say too much about it, because it would need much more time to. And also, we need to see how it really plays out in reality when it's there, and when we don't know when it's there, when it will be really widely deployed, and how it develops. But
very interesting, because all this tech is still very new. Anyways, Lightning Network is still barely an alpha, right?
Yeah. But I think it can go very fast when the miners are stopped blocking and doing their bullshit. Then we could get it very quickly. I mean, in Litecoin they have it, and I think there are already public examples out where it works, and so there's a lot of
absolutely. And you know, there's full duplex microtransactions and other things you can do with payment channels. And now with DriveChain, we've got the possibility to have you know, separate chains to do different types of functionality. The possibilities are just actually flowering really majorly right now this year.
Actually, we could make something like alternative tokens, which are similar as a colored coin tokens, which are similar like BSQ, but which just act as an IOU for other currencies or for fiat. And as soon as people are willing to trade these IOUs, they are just trading on Bitcoin. It's just this one single atomic transaction, so completely trustless and fast. And that would be a way where we are basically doing similar stuff like on the Lightning Network, but we are doing it in our application because we have the infrastructure of a peer-to-peer network and the Bitcoin network and everything. And when people are willing to deal with this for faster trades or speculation, that they are not interested in really settlement, but they are okay that they say, okay, I have now this dollar coin in as a colored coin. And of course, packed currencies are always very difficult. I don't have plans to implement a packed currency, but I think there are some avenues in this direction, and who knows what will be developed on top of this. But there are a few other. I want to step a little bit back what you said before with DAOs and Ethereum, and so I think one big misconception what people have, and one problem is when you are building a decentralized application, you need a peer-to-peer network, and that's a very big challenge. Also for Bisq, it was the biggest challenge to get the peer-to-peer network working, and there are not many libraries out yet which you really can just take and use and it works. It's a big challenge, and most people don't have the technical skills or resources to build this. And they are jumping on Ethereum because they use it and abuse it as a peer-to-peer network to do all the kind of stuff because, on-chain, and that cannot work and cannot scale because when every company would do their business logic in smart contracts on Ethereum, forget it, that can never work and never scale. And I think the way to go, in my opinion, is that you have the full infrastructure what you need, and that's especially the peer-to-peer network and the applications. And what you're doing is only interesting for your ecosystem. Nobody who is not interested and not using BSQ don't need to evaluate and verify our BSQ transactions and voting or whatever. That's completely doesn't make sense and just costs money. And then you keep it in a small scale because most projects, they don't have millions of users, they have maybe thousands of users. And those are running anyway an application. Any computer is fast enough to do all this kind of calculations easily. The only critical element is the input data, which is related with money. That you don't want like voting. The voting in our case is a precursor for money because by voting, you get the right to issue new money. So when somebody could manipulate the vote, he could manipulate the money. So that's why.
Did you say input what?
The input for this verification or smart contracts or for whatever you're doing, what you're verifying, that's the important part, which need to be trustless and where you need a blockchain. But that's only the data storage. It's very tiny data what you need for this. Like for voting, we have in the worst case it's 80 bytes, and the rest you can do all on your application, implemented in whatever language and environment you have. You don't need a smart contract engine or a platform for this or language for this. When you combine it in the right way, you can build decentralized applications which are actually doing smart contracts, which are implementing programmable money for organizational structure, and you don't need all these hyped buzzwords and concepts. Right. I think it's actually much more old school. Like, I mean, the only really innovative is the Bitcoin blockchain. What's added? The rest of the DAO, what I implemented, could have been implemented already 20 years ago. There's nothing really new. The technology was out there. Peer-to-peer network is nothing new, and it's the only really new thing is to use the Bitcoin blockchain as the trust root and the incentive model with money, and that you can create your own tokens as to motivate the people that they're exchanging the value in the ecosystem of the project.
Got it. Excellent. Well, we got one question from Thomas. You guys go ahead and put your questions into the live chat. How can we get more people to use Bisq so that it gets critical mass? Personally, I strongly feel that the project was not ready until now because of the fees. That was a big, major block to the usability, and that's gone now. And I think that it's now ready. But go ahead.
May I interrupt quickly, because this problem was not a problem at all until February, more or less. And in my opinion, this blockchain congestion is a spam attack from the big blockers and for political reasons, because at the moment...
Of course, I totally agree. But yeah, you still have to have the means to defend against it.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I mean, the weak point in our system were that we had fixed fees because it was much easier to implement. But the whole year, last year, it was a completely non-problem, not issue. It was just when the network got spammed like crazy and fee were going up from 5 cents 1 year ago and to 2 or 3 euro. It was, we couldn't, we didn't have enough time to adopt it so quickly, and with this release it's solved now. But yeah, just wanted to clarify this, that it was kind of like a short term for 2 or 3 months. There was this problem between probably March and May, and now it's solved, and before it was also not a problem.
Yeah, so, you know, I think that the DAO itself that you're launching right now could bring a good amount of attention to the platform, to using it. You know, you've got this issuance model, and then, you know, there's also, of course, people that are going to speculate on these colored Bitcoin BSQ tokens. And so then be like, wait, what exactly this is? Wait, oh, I don't have to, you know, send 7 documents and a blood sample to the exchange in order to get, you know, approved to go on this exchange. I can just, you know, download some really easy software, load it up, and 5 minutes later, put up an offer. And I mean, with certain fiat types of movements, some countries have very quick fiat payment methods. And, you know, for these type of amounts, if you're not, you know, sending hundreds of thousands of, you know, euros back and forth or whatever, you know, you could do one of these trades really fast. Well, with more liquidity, of course, they will be that fast.
Yeah, there are luckily a few modern payment methods like Swish in Sweden or in UK. They are very good and very modern. I think they're instant, basically. And it's really surprising that the banks are still needing a few days for doing a transaction. I mean, that's really completely, yeah,
well, there's no technical reason. They just make money off of sitting on it. That's it. They're just rent seekers.
They have not updated their IT since the 80s, basically. I mean, they're really running mainframes. When I was studying, I had 2 developers who was working at banks, and the stories, what they told me, were just shocking and amusing at the same time, but also shocking because you couldn't believe it. And also, yeah, money get lost like hell there, and they're just covering because they have enough money. But yeah, the systems are not working, basically. Anyway,
yeah. So when you found out about Bitcoin in 2011, you know, did it change your political outlook, or were you already kind of a freedom oriented person and looking for sort of ways to increase freedom in the world, or libertarian or some way, or into Austrian economics, your home country?
I'm actually not a libertarian and not a free market guy. I'm from Europe, and we have a very different background like people from America. I mean, in Europe, we have a very strong social security system, and I benefited a lot. I could study freely in Austria, and I see a lot of value what governments can do when the governments are working in more or less okay. And in Austria or in some Scandinavian countries, the governments are not terribly corrupt. In many other countries, especially the US and also many other countries in the world, a big majority, of course, the governments are, yeah, just a corrupt bunch of whatever, what should be replaced by a better model. So from this background, I understand that people
you don't think the EU is corrupt in Brussels and the ECB? You don't think the ECB is corrupt? Come on, Manfred.
I don't have an opinion about this. But anyway, I don't believe that the markets are solving our real problems. And we see it at the moment with these ICOs. people, I mean, we have a free market, and the mining the same. I mean, there is no regulation for mining or for the ICOs. And what's happening? I mean, the market is completely failing. They are evaluating projects with a white paper with 150 millions. That's not a good result. And people are just gambling. I mean, the market, I think it's the motivations. There is nothing like pure economic selfish self-interest. So like we see with mining, there's a lot of political interests involved and short-term interests. Maybe you can make quickly a lot of money and destroying the project or create a lot of damage in the long term, but you're not interested in the long term. You want to make quickly your money and then you're happy and go out. I think that's a very weak model. Of course, markets work and we are using it as well. But
it's interesting with the Bisq DAO is an interesting combination of markets and offline or political process. That's really interesting. It's kind of a balance as far as I understand it.
Yeah.
We've got some comments and questions here. Written in Java. Oh, who said this? I want to give shout outs to you guys. Jeremy J. Thanks for joining us, man. I've seen you over on the Bitcoin group chat. Written in Java with Maven dependencies. Easy to work on this Java application. Nice work. So Jeremy is giving you kudos for the organization there. Well done. And we've got a question from Alvaro Ruiz. Any fresh ideas on how to ease new users to go around the deposit barrier? And also Dakaboot asks, do you expect regional deposit issues?
Yeah, the security deposit is a little bit a barrier because when you don't have Bitcoin, you cannot use Bisq. And it was brought up many, many times by people, but in reality, and also one approach was that I started on the forum a thread where I told the people, yeah, when you have this problem, just get in contact with me. I borrow you the security deposit, the money what you need, and you pay me back. I risk that
you'll lend them the Bitcoin.
Sorry, yeah, I'm lending them the small amount of Bitcoin, which is a few euro, whatever. And actually, I think it happened one time, all in all. So actually, there's no really demand for this. I think it's a theoretical problem what people are bringing up who have Bitcoin. And the classical, and I had this also with some friends who wanted to get into Bitcoin, newcomers. And they usually have some friends who are telling them about, and those can lend them the small amount of Bitcoin. So I think it's not a real problem. And there is no easy, I mean, there are some ideas how we could make it basically, could remove it for very tiny amounts, but then you have no security. Then the other could basically scam you and you are losing time. I mean, they cannot steal your money, but
you could do, this is something that the DAO could vote on, of course, like everything else in Bisq, the Bisq ecosystem. But you could do something like a special onboarding trades where the market maker, is locking up some BSQ tokens, and then there's a fiat deposit that's paid before the trade or something like that, where because right now the deposits are like 0.01 Bitcoin or something, which is about $23 right now.
Now you can
0.03.
The maker can define it now. I think the smallest, or I don't remember exactly, but the smallest amount is quite low. I think something like €5. The market maker can define it. There is a default value, but he can define if he take the minimum or the maximum, and then it's up to the users. I mean, it could work. Much better when we would have really demand for this. An idea is to make a lending marketplace so that on top of Bisq, anybody could make an offer. They can say, I'm willing to lend 0.1 Bitcoin with these conditions, with this interest rate, and I want to make whatever risk rating with the other person. So when you want to borrow the money from me, I want to see your real life identity with your passport or whatever, or it's enough that you send me your social media account, and then I take the risk. And it's completely out of system. So they take the risk. When they get scammed, they have to make better risk analysis and rating themselves. Bisq would only serve as the platform for connecting the people. People can make their offers and can take the offers of the others, but the exchange and the lending will be done completely between the peers. There's no security features or whatever included. it would not be terrible much effort. Probably we could implement it in something like 1 or 2 months. It's mainly UI work.
Wow.
I mean, it might be one of the future application. We have a lot of ideas for future application, what we can do. Another is CoinJoin and multi-sig wallet that you can, you really have a user-friendly multi-sig wallet, and many other stuff.
Awesome. Alvaro's responds, that sounds nice. A first extra checked and slower buy my first Bitcoin operation would help. So that's really interesting, like an onboarding thing. But you're mentioning that a Bitcoin sort of lending platform would be relatively easy to create, which is just totally amazing to me. I love that idea. And, you know, it's like Bitcoin, you know, a functional DAO in the ecosystem is going to spawn, you know, more projects that you can then use that, you know, can be totally separate projects, but that are, you know, sort of, once again, like a layer 3, right? It's something that, you know, can hook into Bisq, or it could just be used alone as a lending platform, right? Back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, the infrastructure, the real value, I think, of Bisq is the infrastructure that you have. The application with the UI, a desktop application which runs on every operating system without any extra setup, and the Bitcoin integration. And you can build like a landing platform, all kind of applications on top of this, basically. And then with the DAO, you can integrate it to the DAO. So the DAO could be then the mother not only of the trading platform, of the exchange, but it could be then the tool also to pay the developers who are implementing their landing platform, or a decentralized contract for difference, or a oracle for price delivery that trustless or trust minimized prices, which are then used for something like a CFD or for other platforms who need like an oracle.
Yeah, it's a bootstrap, right? Like you got the 25 Bitcoins donated to you without anybody being able to stop that from happening. By the same token, you can have this DAO that's totally decentralized, you know, funding new development without being able to be stopped either. It's the censorship resistance. All right, well, I think we've pretty much covered all of the subjects that we had planned to do so. Really, really interesting talking to you, Manfred. I can't wait to see how this project turns out. I'm going to be sending in my contributor request and say, hey, I did a show on it and I got some viewers, you know, I got X amount of views. So give me 3.1, you know, BSQ tokens. I got my $9 worth of BSQ, and you know, try to follow things on the forum and do my voting. I'm actually really excited. I can't wait to participate in the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And actually, that's the area where we are lacking, where we have our weakest spot is the promotion and spreading the word. Unfortunately, we don't have any person who is doing this really, and it's a lot of work. I do it a little bit, but I'm limited. I need to do development and other stuff. So anybody who...
Well, maybe I'll throw my hat in the ring if I can find the time.
Yeah. Anybody who has time and motivation and the right mindset to join us and help us on this area would be super welcome, especially also for the DAO. Yeah, we need to make it public that people know about it. And yeah, as said, with this contribution request, we have now a model, incentive model, which is beyond the pure altruistic motivations. And hopefully this will work out well.
Great. Well, we've got one last comment I wanted to mention from our wonderful listener and watcher who's very intelligent, knowledgeable, always helping out people on the chat. I want to give a big shout out to Paula Green. She's often on you know, our live chats, and she's very knowledgeable. I believe she's a minor, but her comment just now was cool show, guys. Well done. Tough subject. Hope this guy can build a decentralized oracle. She was talking about Jim Bell on the chat, and there's all sorts of challenges in this space now that we've got decentralized money. There's so many other things to decentralize, and the exchange was a really big part. Everyone saw the need for it 6 years ago, but it took Manfred Karrer from Oberösterreich to put it together and to really bring this dream to life. And now we, the users and contributors to the platform, are all benefiting from your efforts. So big thank you and big love from all of us out here in Bitcoin land. And I just wanted to say to our listeners and watchers that you should go to bisq.io, that's bisq.io, and check out the forums, download the software, use the software, make the market, make it happen, protect your privacy. There's no better way to buy and sell Bitcoin at a distance, unless you're gonna go meet somebody and have a knife in your pocket, like Tone Vays talks about. You're going to need a tool like Bisq to get that done. It's a much better way, and it feels great when you do that trade. You're like, wow, the only person that knows I did that is the person that just paid me or who I just paid some fiat to, and that's the only people that know that that happened, I guess, and the bank. But in any case, thank you so much once again, and I hope to catch up with you and talk about how the DAO is going, perhaps end of the year.
Yes, thanks a lot for having me on the show. It was a fantastic conversation, and I really enjoy your contribution, what you've done. You helped a lot with making the DAO paper much better to read, and now for having the great conversation on the show. Thanks.
Thank you. Talk to you guys all soon. Thanks for joining us for FutureRant episode 3.